Hey there, today I'm gonna explain a survival thriller film that depicts a broke electrician struggling to pay hospital bills for his father who just met with an accident, and requires another operation. Vince, the protagonist, accidentally got himself involved in a deadly game. The rules are simple, dead or alive. Participants are given guns with 1 or 2 bullets in the barrel. After it's spun, they are left at the mercy of their luck. The second round is over and most of the participants have been shot dead. Luckily Vince is still alive. The rich guys are elated to place high-stake bets on participants. If someone dies, they make millions. The finalist will walk out with $2 million, and Vince's fate is yet to be decided. Terror Recaps welcomes you to number 13. The movie unfolds in a building where stacks of cash change hands. Vincent points a gun at a man's head, while the man points his own firearm back at him. Vince waits for the opportune moment to pull the trigger, as he recollects the events that led up to this situation. 4 days ago in Ohio, Vince, his mother, and sisters decided to sell their house to cover the expenses of his father's medical bills who met with an accident. Vince is an electrician. That morning he meets one of his clients, Mr. Harrison, and overhears him confessing to a friend about a peculiar job that will generate a substantial amount of money in just one day. Although Mr. Harrison completed the job in the past with the help of luck, the memories still haunt him. After Mr. Harrison's friend leaves, he heads to his room, hoping to have a good time, but accidentally gets overdosed to death. Later on, the cops question Vince and eventually allow him to leave after gathering important information. However, before departing, Vince swipes the mysterious envelope from Mr. Harrison's desk, which contains a train ticket for New York and a CPS receipt for pickup. At the post office, Vince presents his ID to the clerk and receives a package with a phone, $500 cash, a key, and a letter with a spider logo, instructing him to use the money for his hotel stay in New York, and to only use the provided phone. Vince will receive further instructions later on. Mr. Harrison's girlfriend informs the police about the missing envelope, and they trace Vince's name as the person who collected it. Detective Milan, who is investigating the case regarding the envelopes, orders the cops to follow Vince. The next day Vince boards the train to New York, unaware of the cop tailing him. He follows the instructions and stays in the hotel overnight, receiving a call on his new phone in the middle of the night. Pretending to be Mr. Harrison, Vince receives more instructions. He goes to the Postnet store and unlocks a P.O. box with the key, and finds another envelope containing a train ticket for Macomb and a small cork piece with the number 13 on it. Vince must exit the train one stop before Macomb. While on the train, the inspector requests Vince's ticket and informs the cops about his intended destination being Macomb. After getting off the train, his next move is to hail a cab to the outskirts of town, where he is met by a car driven by a man named Jack. Jack shows Vince a piece of cork with the number 13 on it. And after Vince shows his own, Jack ushers him into the car and takes his phone. Seconds later, Milan and the cops arrive and ask the cabbie for information, but they are too late to catch Vince. Jack takes Vince to an old shack in the forest where he is searched and given new clothes. The other men even go as far as cutting the heels off his shoes to ensure he isn't hiding anything. Vince is then driven to a mansion full of wealthy people where he meets Joe, his benefactor. Joe realizes Vince isn't Harrison. Vince explains Harrison died from overdose. So he allows him to participate in the game to avoid any trouble with the other guests. The guests are placing high-stakes bets on the game downstairs, with Jasper placing a bet on his patron, number 6, and Joe placing a bet on Vince, who is designated as number 13. The game turns out to be Russian roulette, and Vince and the other participants, all wearing black t-shirts with their numbers, are given guns and made to stand in a circle. A group of men are given 1 bullet each, and they spin their gun barrels before pointing them at the person in front of them. They wait for a light bulb with a spider symbol to light up, and when it does, they shoot. Those who survive move on to the next round. Vince is extremely anxious and requires Jack's assistance to load his gun. When the bulb lights up, some men are killed, but Vince hasn't fired yet. Security intervenes and warns him of getting shot if he doesn't follow the rules, so Vince finally shoots and luckily the man in front of him survives. After the first round, Joe gives Vince a pep talk and advises him to be strong. Joe also takes bets from the patrons whose men were killed, and Jack offers Vince some morphine, which he declines. Meanwhile, participant number 17, Patrick Jefferson, pleads with his patron Jimmy to help him escape and offers to pay him 50 times the amount he's paid. Jimmy is puzzled as to why Jefferson would participate in such a dangerous game if he's so wealthy, so Jefferson reveals his past of being in jail and being shipped to the mansion in a box. However, Jimmy is unmoved by his story and declines to assist him. Jasper is also taking additional bets on his participant, who turns out to be his brother Ronald Lynn Bagas. Just recently, Jasper got his brother Ronald Lindbagas out of a mental institution to participate as his player in the game. In the second round, each player now has 2 bullets. Unfortunately, half of the players end up dead. Luckily, Vince survives the round by chance when the player behind him didn't have time to shoot. During the game, number 16 suddenly stands up again, but the doctor checks his injuries and declares him unable to continue. As a result, security ends up shooting him. Participant number 11, Hans, suffers a mental breakdown, and his patron Schlundorf tries to calm him down with an uplifting speech, but it doesn't do much good. Jefferson continues his conversation with Jimmy, sharing more of his personal history. He explains that he went to jail for stealing from a truck, but before he was caught, he hid the stolen money in a safe location. If he loses the game, he wants Jimmy to locate the money using a map he has drawn, which he will keep in his pocket. Jefferson offers Jimmy half of the money if he sends the other half to his son, who is also in jail, and Jimmy agrees to the plan. As Jasper collects more bets, he has some flashbacks of his own. When he took Ronald out of the mental institution, Ronald stopped taking his medication, claiming he felt better without it. Now, Ronald's health has taken a turn for the worse. After drawing the number, Jasper declares that Ronald will be pointing at number 13. He suddenly throws an ashtray at Vince's head. Jasper immediately intervenes before things get out of hand. During round 3, the game is taking a visible toll on the participants, with Hans requiring morphine to calm down and participate, and number 3 needing a chair just to be able to play. This time Ronald provokes Vince by pushing him and even slapping him, but the host steps in to stop him. In this round, each player will be given 3 bullets. After the shooting, only 5 players remain: Vince, Jefferson, Ronald, participant number 3, and participant number 9. Consequently, the competition can move on to the final stage of the game, which is the duel. 5 balls have been placed on the table, consisting of 2 black and 3 white ones. The supporters of the remaining 5 players will each select a ball, and those who receive the black ones will compete in the final duel, while the other 3 are free to leave. Jasper and Joe draw the black balls, which means that Vince will face Ronald in the final duel. Although Jasper, being the experienced player, is favored by most of the new bets, Joe manages to persuade Schlundorf to place a 5-1 bet on Vince, which means a more significant payout. Jimmy informs Jefferson that he can collect his winnings and depart. However, while Jefferson is changing into his regular clothes, he is distracted, and Jimmy tries to attack him from behind. Fortunately, security intervenes before any harm is done and reminds Jimmy that survivors cannot be harmed. Jefferson curses Jimmy's name and ridicules him for believing rumors as he takes out the piece of paper he had in his pocket, showing that it is blank. Jimmy and the guard leave, and just before Jefferson finishes changing, he reveals that it was all a ruse. The blank paper was a decoy, and he still has the map on him, which he then burns before leaving. Before the final round commences, Ronald lashes out at Jasper, insulting him and demanding his share of the winnings this time. Ronald knows that Jasper received funds from their parents to take care of them, but Jasper used the money to commit him to a mental institution and only took him out to participate in the game without sharing any of the winnings. As the final duel approaches, each player is given 3 bullets. Vince and Ronald stare each other down as they take aim, but neither of them falls when they shoot. Luck was on their side. For their second attempt, an extra bullet is added, and this time Ronald falls, meaning that Vince has won the competition. Schlundorf is elated about his risky bet, but Jasper is devastated by the loss of his brother. However, it is Vince who feels the worst, as he now has to live with the weight of Ronald's death on his conscience. Vince receives the final prize of $1,850,000, and the man who pays him acknowledges his luck as Ronald had been victorious in all his previous duels. Schlundorf and Joe congratulate him and offer to give him a ride to the train station, which Vince pretends to accept. However, he uses the opportunity to sneak through the participants' room and escape through the window while Jack notices his absence, but Joe seems unbothered. The next morning, Vince is spotted by the same taxi driver who had taken him to the train station the day before, which spells trouble. The driver calls the police and informs them of Vince's whereabouts. Fortunately for Vince, he spots the police cars from a distance and manages to hide his bag of money in a nearby trash can before they apprehend him. Moments later, Vince is taken to Milan for interrogation. The detective questions him about the money, but Vince feigns ignorance and improvises a story on the spot. He recounted to Milan how he never made it to the competition as he was mistaken for someone else and subsequently abandoned in the forest with the intent to be shot, but he managed to escape. To validate his story, Vince showed Milan his damaged shoes, claiming that the heels were worn off from the extensive running. Although Vince offered to identify the perpetrators if caught, he was unable to direct Milan to the exact location he was left as he was blindfolded during the incident. Milan had no choice but to release Vince due to a lack of additional leads or evidence. After arriving at the station, Vince realized that his bag was missing upon returning to the trash can. He discovered that the bags had been replaced and began rummaging through them, ultimately finding his money. Fearing for the safety of his funds, Vince sent the money to his family via registered mail at the post office, followed by a call to his mother to ensure that someone would be present to receive the package upon delivery. He then proceeded to travel to New York and spent the night at a hotel before purchasing some snacks at a local grocery store. While shopping, Vince stumbled upon a lamb plushie that reminded him of his sister and offered to purchase it from the clerk, who initially refused to sell it. Eventually, Vince paid $100 for the plushie before boarding his final train back to Ohio. During the journey, Jasper, the assailant who had been trailing him, engaged in small talk with Vince. As the train reaches the first station, he shoots him and steals his bag. Jasper mistakenly considered the weight of the large plushie to be the money, but in reality, Vince had sent the money to his family via registered mail. As he lay dying, Vince swallowed the post office receipt while thinking of his loved ones. Thanks for watching.